All right, welcome back, or welcome to the garage. It's Tush coming at you. We are just about to start a new project on the 73 Triumph TR6 that you see in front of you here. It's rapidly coming to the end of driving season up here. It's the end of October 2022, and this car will be going into storage shortly to join the TR250 and the TR3A that are already in storage. But I thought I would do one more project before the season ends up here, and that project will be to install some Mazda Miata seats, so Mazda MX-5 seats, in my 73 Triumph TR6. I thought I'd bring you along to show you the installation process. This is a fairly popular conversion in these cars, so I thought I would document it on video. So I guess the best place to start would be to talk about the actual seats that we'll be installing in the car. So I have in front of me a set of NA Miata seats. So NA meaning this was the original series of Mazda Miatas that were produced from 1990 to 1997. Now the particular bracket kit that I'm going to be using actually is for the NA seat specifically. However, it's my understanding that if you get the NA seat brackets and fit them to the NB model seats, which were available in the Miata from 1998 to 2005, that this kit that I'm using will work for both the NA and NB seat models. Again, these are the NA seat models that you see in front of you. They're just a black fabric, but you can also get them in leather. We'll talk a little bit more about the seat coverings in a little bit. I should also mention that although this particular video is the installation of these seats in a Triumph TR6, and as mentioned, this is applicable to the TR4, 4A, 5, and 250 as well, I have seen these seats installed in Triumph TR3s. I've also seen them in Triumph TR7s and TR8. So I'm pretty sure there is a custom bracketry available for those cars if you're interested in installing these in a TR3, 7, or 8. However, this video does not cover that installation procedure. Before I go on, I just wanted to mention a couple of excellent online resources that you should check out regarding the Mazda Miata seat conversions for the Triumph TR sports cars. One is Bob Danielson's Triumph TR6 webpage. I'll put the link in the description below. Bob has a lot of information on Mazda Miata seats in particular on his website, along with a whole bunch of other great projects that he's documented. So it's a worthwhile visit to Bob's site to check out not only the Miata seat information, but also all of his other projects that he's done on his wonderful Triumph TR6. The other resource that I'm going to recommend that you check out online is Rick Patton's website, Patton Machine, and I'll put the link in the description below. Rick's got some excellent information on the Mazda Miata seat conversion as well. Rick actually does sell a conversion bracket. It's not the conversion kit that I'm using on my project, but he has an excellent conversion bracket set if you decide to go that way as well. Rick's brackets are not going to be featured in this video, but there is a good write-up on them on the aforementioned Bob Danielson website if you wanted to use the Rick Patton brackets. All right, on the workbench in front of me, we have the actual bracket kit that we're going to be utilizing to install the Miata seats in my Triumph TR6. Now, this bracket kit I purchased from Alexander Racing Enterprises, so ARE, and I'll put a link to that in the comments section below. These are also available at Moss Motors for sale if you wanted to buy them from Moss. And they are produced by a gentleman by the name of Keith Niehaus. So Niehaus Restoration Products, and I'll actually put a link to his website in the comments section below if you wanted to order them directly from Niehaus Restoration Products. So here is the kit just laid out on my workbench in front of me. So you've got a couple of main rails here and a couple of more brackets. And then you've got a hardware kit along with a couple of spacers. There is a full color documentation on how to use this kit to install the Miata seats. So we're going to be following this instruction manual pretty much to the T as we go along and install these seats in the TR6. But there is the kit basically laid out on the table. What I'm going to do next is I'm going to lay the kit out as per the document here to make sure that I have all of the necessary hardware before we start our project. So we'll clean the bench up a little bit, make a little bit of space, and we'll lay this out as it should be laid out in the car. Just wanted to mention one more thing, one more important thing before we continue. It's important that when you're buying these Miata seats that the stock seat rail assemblies are with the seats that you're purchasing. They will be utilized in conjunction with the knee house kit to actually bolt these to the bottom of the car. So very important that you get the seat rails with the seats that you purchase. Now, one more thing, again, I'm no expert, but I believe if you were to get the NB seats, so the later Miata seats, and you fitted those NB seats with the NA seat rails, you could also utilize those seats with this bracketry system, and I believe the patent bracketry system as well. So it is possible to convert the NB seats or use the NB seats if you have the NA seat rails. All right, here is the kit laid out on the table. Towards the anvil is the front of the car. So these would be the front of the seat rail over here. And these obviously would be the rear. So this would be the passenger side on the right side, the driver's side obviously on the left side here in the screen. These are the rear inside brackets, and these are the front inside spacers, these two nylon spacers. I should make note that the intent is to use the stock captive nuts where the stock seat tracks will be mounted to. So if you've made some alterations to your car and are using non-standard hardware to bolt your stock seat tracks in, this kit will not work for you as far as the studs that are supplied. You may need to supply your own hardware. I am using the stock hardware to mount my seats in the car, so these studs should work just perfectly. So there is the outline of the hardware used in the seat installation with the knee house kit. All right, a little bit better look at the seats that I'm going to be installing in my car. Now, these are obviously a fabric material. You can get them in leather. As mentioned, if you're looking for alternative ways to cover your seats, you can look at the Mr. Mike's websites. They do very nice Triumph embroidered seats. There's a number of different embroidery options you can get. For example, in this area here, you can get them with piping. You can get them with different colored inserts. The number of options is just mind-boggling actually when you look at it. So I'm just going to be using the black or sort of charcoal fabric. Again, these are in pretty good shape. I'm going to pretty much just steam clean them and use them as they are. I may decide to change the covers at a later date, but that's what we're working with initially. One thing you're going to want to look at when you do purchase these seats is to check obviously the condition of the seat overall and what kind of condition the foams are in. If your foams are in bad shape and your seat looks like it's pretty disfigured, then you'll want to invest probably in some new foams as well. In this case, the bolsters are in good shape. The foams are in good shape where we're just going to go ahead and use it as is. I should mention you should probably check the seat pans and see how rusty they are. They tend to rust quite a bit. These have a bit of surface rust on them, but they're not too bad. So we're going to go ahead and clean these up a little bit and use them as they are. You may want to put a quick coat of paint on them to prevent them from rusting further. But these are actually not in too bad a shape. The passenger side seems to be a little bit more rusty than the driver's side. As mentioned, you want to make sure that you have the factory seat rails, and we do have them on this car. There are some modifications that need to be done. We'll capture that in the video a little bit later on, but I just wanted to give you an overall view of the seats to begin with. I should mention that on this seat, this one does have a couple of rips or tears on the back here. So what we're going to do is we're just going to grab a little bit of contact cement and we're just going to sort of patch that up as best as we can. I'm not too worried about it at this point. Again, this is more of an installation video on how to get these seats in the car. I'm going to see if I actually like them before I do any investment in seat covers. Again, I may just go with these We'll see. Again, one of the more popular options for these are the in headrest speakers, and you'll see some cars that actually have the speakers in the headrests, and that's a whole nother story if you want to go ahead and upgrade those speakers while you're installing new covers, but that's not going to be covered in this video. Alright, before I remove the stock TR6 seats, I just want to have a little bit of a seat discussion. So there were 3 different seats that were installed on the TR6s throughout the production. My TR6 is a 73, so from 1973 to the end of production in 1976, they had these seats installed, and these are the, let's call them the movable headrest, so the non-fixed headrest seats. And I find these personally the least comfortable of all of the TR6 seats that were installed. There was a single year seat that was installed on the 69 Triumph TR6 that had a foldable headrest, but a fixed back as far as the recline was concerned. That, in my mind, is the most comfortable seat, and some of you might recall who've watched my channel know that I have a 69 set of seats that used to be in this car. I've now moved those to my 68 Triumph TR250, as I find them more comfortable than the low back seats that came in the TR250. So since I've moved the 69 seats out of here on my 73 TR6 and put the stock seats back in, I'm really missing the comfort level of the 69 seats. That's why we're going to the Miata seat conversion. There is one other seat that started in 70, and that is a fixed headrest seat with a recline option. Those, I think, are the second most comfortable seats in the TR6 lineup, and as I mentioned, these 73 to 76 are the least comfortable in my opinion. Alright, the TR6 seats are pretty easy to remove. It doesn't matter what year you're working on, it's the same process to remove the seats. So you can see the front of the seat here. If I just go downwards, you'll see a bolt here, 1/2 inch bolt, and a nut combination on either side of the seats that holds the front of the seats down to the seat tracks. So all you're going to want to do to start this process is to remove these nuts off these bolts, and you'll be able to lift the seat off the seat track, and then we can go ahead and remove the seat track. So we'll go ahead and remove those bolts, one on this side, and you won't be able to see it, I don't think, but one on the inside over here, and again, we'll just remove those and lift the seats out. Alright, the best access to these 2 bolts are from below. If you tip the seat forward, you have better access to them, so you can see them there on either side, I believe. So we're going to go ahead and get a couple of open-ended wrenches and remove those. Alright, the 2 bolts are undone at the front of the seat. We should be able to just lift that out. Just make sure that your seat is not locked back down to the keepers on the backs of the seat tracks before you attempt this. So it should just lift straight out. Make sure that your seat belts are not in the way, aren't going to snag anything. And we'll just go ahead and we'll grab that and lift it straight up and out. A little bit more difficult with the hard top on, but doable. Just like that. Alright, side-by-side comparison, the stock TR6 seat and the Miata seat. You can see that the Miata seat is significantly taller than the TR6 seat. Even with the headrest fully extended, the TR6 would be shorter. Now, that TR6 headrest is completely useless. It hits me below my neck, probably just at the top of my back. So the Miata seats are going to give me some more support for sure. Now, it may be a little bit more difficult to fit your tonneau cover. Again, I don't run a tonneau cover on my TR6 because I do have a custom roll bar in the car that makes it difficult to fit a tonneau cover. If you fit a tonneau cover, I believe that you can either tilt these seats back, the Miata seats back, or forward enough that you'll still be able to utilize your tonneau cover. If not, you may need to actually put some pockets in your tonneau cover. There are, if you go back and look through the Triumph range, for example, there are earlier tonneau covers. As I mentioned, the 69 TR6 had folding headrests. So the tonneau covers for the 69s were completely flat. As the cars went through the years, and whether they had a fixed headrest or a movable headrest, they ended up putting pockets in the tonneau covers for the stock seats. So again, I'm not sure as far as modifications are going to be done to your tonneau cover. It depends on, I guess, what year TR6 you have, and whether the Miata seats will go low enough to get under your tonneau cover. Should also mention, just from a weight perspective, you are gaining a little bit of weight with the Miata seat. The stock TR6 seat weighs 29 pounds. The Miata seats weigh 34 pounds. So if you're racing, that might be an issue for you. Then again, I guess if you're racing, you're going to have a full race seat in the car, right? Alright, now that the driver's seat is out, we're going to do the same process to remove the passenger seat, and then we'll go about removing the seat tracks. Okay, next step is to remove the stock seat tracks. So you can see there's a couple of bolts here at the rear, and these hold down the plates that lock the seats down. So these have adjustable slots in them. So we're going to remove these with a 7/16 ratchet, and then we are going to remove the front bolts, and then we'll move the seat track forward to reveal the rear bolts to remove those. So we'll go ahead and do that now. Alright, let's do this the other way around. So I've removed the lock plates. We'll leave the fronts fastened where they are. We'll move the seat track forward. I don't know if I can do this one-handed, but you can see you can't see the rear bolts. But if you pull this forward, there you can reveal the rear bolts here. So we'll take those out, slide the track back, and then take the front back out. So 6 fasteners total on the stock seat bracket, and we can now lift that out of the car. You'll notice below that there are spacers. I don't believe we need to use these spacers with the Miata seats, but I'll confirm that. I'll leave them there on the floor for now, but I believe we need to remove those as well. Of course, we have to take the opportunity to vacuum the carpets. Much better. Alright, I broke down and decided to do a little scrubbing action on the bottom of the seat pan. So we just gave them a quick roll-lock disc, fiber disc, whatever you want to call it, and scratched all the rust off and gave them a quick coat of rust paint. So we've got our heater out, since it's only about 50 degrees, 52 Fahrenheit, just probably 11 degrees Celsius in the garage. We got the heater out for the first time this year, so we'll let that bake for an hour or two before we handle them. So we'll go inside and wait for that to set up before we go to the next step. Alright, let's start with the installation process on the seats. And the first step in the instructions is to remove the factory seat tracks on the bottom of the Miata seats. They suggest that you remove the wire. This is the wire that activates the sliding mechanism. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to unclip the wire here carefully, and we want to keep it to reinstall it. So it's just held on here with a couple of sort of hog rings that have been bent over. So we're just going to unbend those and feed the old wire out. Then we are going to undo the 4 bolts. There are 4 bolts here. Again, you may have to slide the rack back and forth. You can probably just see them there. There's 4 bolts. They are, I believe, 12 millimeter. So we'll get the impact wrench out to remove those once we get this wire off. Alright, I've just marked the rails just for easy reference, front and rear. And I also marked the side that has the adjustment for the tilt mechanism on the inside here. And we'll go ahead and remove these bolts. So again, they're 12 millimeter. And in order to get to this rear one, we need to bring this rail back for access. Just the 2 12 millimeter bolts, and then this should come off. So there you go. There's the one rail. And we'll do the same on the other. Now that we've removed the wire, we'll probably have to grab a screwdriver just to pry that, just to be able to move that bracket. So let me grab a screwdriver. spring loaded, so be careful with your fingers. I don't know if you're in the frame on this side. Yeah, it looks like you are. And there are the seat rails removed from the bottom of the seat. Here's what it looks like now, before we move on to the next step, which I believe will be to straighten these seat rails. All right, we'll be back. All right, guys, the next step is to remove on each of the rails at the front. There's this little factory locating pin. You can see it there on both rails. There is this pointy pin that needs to be removed. So you can do one of two things. You can either try to drill it out from the back. There's kind of a big rivet in the back. You can either drill that out or try to grind it out from the back, or you can cut it off flush. So I've got a small Dremel here, and I'm just going to cut it off flush and grind it down. So that's what I'm going to do. You can do as you wish, but regardless, that locating pin has to come off both rails. Alright, just a quick shot of those tabs removed and ground down, so we'll move on to the next step. We're going to do one side at a time, just in case you haven't noticed, just in case I only want to screw up on one side if I'm going to screw up. So we'll do one side at a time and keep the other for reference. Alright, the next step of the process is to bend the ends. So this is the front end of the bracket, and you can see how it's got a bend in it. So the next part of the process to actually bend this bracket straight at the end. So we'll do that in the vise. Maybe we'll keep you on camera here, or we'll bring you back once I get it set up in the vise. We're just going to attempt to bend it by hand in the vise. I don't think we're going to need any heat, but you never know how much of a struggle these things are going to put up. So let me get it set up in the vise and I'll come back. Alright, let's see how we do here. I'm just going to pull it towards me. Hopefully straighten this out without too much issue. This is good, good shoulder workout. Yeah, it's bending pretty easily. You want to over bend it. Maybe a touch more. All right, that's looking pretty straight. We can always bend it a little bit more if need be, but that's looking good. We'll do the same with the other bracket that needs to be straightened. All right, there's the other bracket straightened. All right, let's move on to the next step. All right, the next step is to reassemble the brackets or the tracks back on the seat, and then go ahead and reinstall the wire. So we'll go ahead and we'll do that now. Make sure you've got your brackets on the right side. All right, so seat tracks and the wire have now been reinstalled, so we'll move on to the next step. Okay, back over at the workbench, the next process is to start using the bracketry, and the first thing we need to do are install the 4 studs per side. So again, we're going to be working on the passenger side first. So this is the rear of the bracketry system. So we've got these 2 studs here, 1, 2. Then we have a third up here which goes on the outside. It's a little bit shorter than the one that goes on the inside, and this is the one that will have the spacer. So let's get these installed in the car. We'll come back with one last look before we move to the next step. All right, there's the first stud on the inside front, which is the longest stud. And what I'm using is just a pair of vice grip with some masking tape over the jaws, and I'm trying to grab below where I know the threads are going to be used, just in order to turn this in a number of threads, so I'm happy with to make sure that it's got at least 5 or 6 threads or more. I'm going to put as many threads in there as I can, so this might need to be screwed down a little bit further, but we'll put it in as far as I think it should be, and then we'll move on to the other studs. But that's what we're using to secure them. If they don't turn in by hand, you may want to just give them a little quick twist with the vice grips to give them a little bit deeper cut into the threads. All right, a quick shot of the 4 studs installed into the floor pan. And the next step is to lay out the bracketry and loosely attach it at 3 points. And then we'll look at the last remaining point, which will be the front inside corner that has the spacer. So let me get the brackets and lay them out as they should with the hardware, and we'll come back. All right, the next step is to fit the Miata seat into the bracketry, and we're going to start by affixing the front inside fastener. So this is the one with the spacer and the fender washer. We have a lock washer and the nut standing by over here, so hopefully we'll have enough threads here to get the nut and lock washer on. Once we get the bracket on, we'll see. Might have to back that out a little bit, but let's get the seat in here and we'll have a quick look and see what adjustments we need to make. The seat might have to come in and out a couple times before we get it right. All right, there's the front inside location. Again, we've used another fender washer on top of the Miata bracket, a lock nut and the nut, and we've got that just fastened there loosely. So we'll move on to the next step, which I'm sure is to locate the other three corners of the bracket on their locations, and probably secure those loosely as well. Let me read the instructions. All right, quick look of the rear brackets with the washers, nuts on there, lock washers. So basically what they want you to do is start at the front, outside, fix that front point, and then you can move the seat forward to access these rear studs and nuts. So we'll go ahead and we want to move this as close to the tunnel as possible so there's not any interference here with the reclining lever on the side panel on this side. So we're going to position the seat and we're going to tighten down the bracketry, and we'll come back and see how this works, see what the seating position is like, and see what the overall impression is. Alright guys, first Miata seat is installed. So according to the instructions, they suggest you tighten up the bracket on the outside front first before sliding the seat forward and tightening the rear bracketry up on both sides. You want to make sure that you have clearance for the tilt mechanism here on the left hand side. It is a little bit tight, so you want to try to squish the seat over as close to the transmission tunnel as possible. So first impressions on sitting in the seats, they definitely sit higher in my car than the stock seats do. I can actually manipulate the backrest a little bit better to be able to get a little bit lower in the car, obviously sit a little bit back further. Otherwise, with the hardtop on, my head just touches the headliner. With the stock seats, that was not possible. So they do definitely sit higher than the stock seats. Now my seats are in pretty good condition, the diaphragms are in good shape, so a lot of the times they say, well, you may feel like you're sitting higher in the Miata seats because your old seats or diaphragms have perished, which sits you lower in the stock seats, but my seats were actually in quite good shape. So I do actually think that the stock Miata, or sorry, the Miata seats sit higher than the stock seats would from the factory. So just take that into mind. Now obviously it's going to be less of an issue if the hardtop is not on, because you're going to have a little bit more headroom. The only issue that you'd have to be aware of then, if you're a taller driver, I'm about 5'11", if you're a taller driver you might be looking into the top of the windscreen frame versus looking through the windscreen. I don't think that's going to be an issue for me, but we'll check when we get to the driver's side what the feel is like over there. Alright, on to the driver's side, same process. We'll probably not take as much video over there unless I run into any issues, but it's the same process obviously with the bracketry for the driver's side, just the inverse of the passenger side. So we're going to do that process on that side as well, and we'll come back when the project is complete. Alright, Saturday morning, just finishing up the Miata seat project and hoping to get out for a drive today. It's a little frosty this morning, but we're going to go for a drive anyway, probably the last drive of the year. Anyway, let's get back to the seat project. Alright, it's the next day and we now have the driver's side seat installed. This one was a little bit more tricky as far as the alignment was concerned. I was having a problem with the inside rear bracket lining up, but I managed to get it done. So there they are installed. Put the console back in. I need to do a little bit of a wrap on this little tab that holds the console in place. So anyway, we're going to go on a drive today, and we'll check out the comfort level and we'll report back. They look good though, I think, even with the fabric covers. They're in pretty good shape, as I'd mentioned. They match the profile of my roll bar quite well. You can probably see that through the glass here. I'm not sure if you can or not, but they're just a little bit lower than the actual roll bar that I have, the double hoop style. So that looks good, I'm happy with that. So yeah, we'll take them out on a road test and report back. Alright, just back from a 100-kilometer run with the local Little British Car Club, and tested out the seats thoroughly on the drive, and I'm very impressed with the comfort of the seats. So yeah, they do sit a tiny little bit higher than the stock seats. The side bolstering is so much better and they're so much more comfortable than the 73 seats that were in the car. So highly recommend it to anybody who wants to swap out their stock seats to the Miata seat conversion. Again, they may not be everybody's cup of tea if you're a slightly taller driver. Since you do sit a little bit higher, it might put you into looking at the top of the windscreen, but like I said, I'm 5'11", and I'm fine with the height of the seats as they are. But yeah, good drive today. Enjoyed the new seats and the new comfort level. We'll put her back in the garage, and I think that will be it for this year of driving. Unfortunately, it is what it is. All right, one last look and into the garage.